The classroom buzzed with deep voices and clicking sounds as alien students filled the metal seats. Yuna sat in the back corner like always. Her small frame looked tiny next to the massive bodies around her. She kept her eyes down on her old datapad and typed notes with quick fingers. The Krellian students were huge. Their thick gray skin looked like rock armor. Sharp teeth showed when they laughed about their latest war stories. They stood 7 feet tall even when sitting down. Their voices rumbled like thunder when they spoke. The Veltari moved fast even while sitting still. Their thin blue bodies seemed to vibrate with energy. Long fingers tapped on desks like drumbeats. Their big black eyes never stopped moving around the room. They whispered to each other in high, quick voices that sounded like birds singing. The Gormaxi were the biggest of all. Their red skin was covered in thick muscle. Heavy breathing filled the air around them. When they shifted in their seats, the metal groaned under their weight. Scars marked their arms and faces like medals of honor. Professor Velton walked into the room. His Krellian body filled the doorway. Old battle scars crossed his face and arms. Students went quiet when they saw him. He had fought in 3 galactic wars and won medals from 4 different planets. "Today we study human military tactics," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "Young species, weak bodies, simple minds. They fight with basic weapons and hope for luck." The alien students laughed. Some made jokes about human size and strength. Yuna kept typing on her datapad. Her face showed nothing but her fingers pressed the keys a little harder. "Humans have no natural armor," the professor continued. "No claws, no poison, no enhanced speed. They are soft creatures who learned to make tools because they could not survive without them." A Krellian student raised his huge hand. "Professor, why do we study weak tactics at all?" "Because even weak species can teach us what not to do," Velton replied. More laughter filled the room. Yuna looked up for just a moment. Her dark eyes moved across the classroom. She saw every student, every weapon they carried, every exit door, every camera in the corners. Then she looked down again and kept taking notes. Her roommate Neri sat 3 rows ahead. The other human student looked nervous. Her hand shook a little as she wrote. Sometimes she glanced back at Yuna with worried eyes. The practical exams were coming soon. Students would fight against each other to show their skills. Humans avoid direct combat, Velton said. They prefer to hide and use distance weapons. This shows their cowardly nature. A Veltari student spoke up fast. "My cousin fought human pirates once. He said they were tricky but not dangerous." "Exactly right," the professor nodded. "Tricks and running away. That is the human way of war." Yuna saved her notes and closed the datapad. Class was almost over. Around her, the alien students packed their things and talked about weekend plans. Some discussed the combat trials. Others made bets about who would win their matches. She stood up slowly. Her movements were smooth and quiet. No one paid attention to the small human girl walking toward the door. They were too busy talking about their own strength and fighting skills. But if any of them had looked closer, they might have noticed something strange. Yuna walked like a person who knew exactly where every other person stood. Her eyes caught details that others missed. Her breathing stayed calm and steady even when others got excited. She moved through the crowded hallway like water flowing around rocks. Students pushed and shoved, but somehow never touched her. She always seemed to be in the exact right place to avoid trouble. The quiet girl in the back corner was watching everything, learning everything, remembering everything. None of them knew that the deadliest hunter in the galaxy sat in their classroom every day. The combat arena filled with excited voices. Students pressed against the safety barriers to get better views. The metal floor gleamed under bright lights. Weapon racks lined the walls with training gear from a dozen different worlds. Yuna stood in the center circle. Her plain academy uniform looked simple next to the combat gear other students wore. She carried no weapons, no armor, just basic training clothes that seemed too big for her small body. Across from her stood Vakvul. The Gormaxi warrior was twice her height and 4 times her weight. Red skin stretched over muscles that bulged like tree trunks. His breathing sounded like a steam engine. Thick fingers gripped 2 plasma training axes that glowed blue at the edges. "This will be quick," someone said from the crowd. "Poor human girl," another student whispered. Professor Velton barely looked at the match. He was already reaching for his medical alert button. The academy rules said teachers had to stop fights before serious injury happened. Everyone expected this to be over in seconds. Instructor Dre checked her timer. "Combat begins when I signal. Fight until one surrenders or cannot continue. Begin." Fakful let out a roar that shook the arena walls. He charged forward with both axes raised high. His heavy feet pounded the metal floor like hammers. Students cheered for the show of strength they expected to see. Yuna did not move. The Gormaxi came closer. 20 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet. His axes came down in a perfect killing strike that would have split a tree in half. Yuna stepped aside. Not fast like the Veltari moved. Not with obvious power like Krellian warriors. She just was not there anymore. The axes hit empty air where she had been standing a moment before. Fakful stumbled forward. His momentum carried him past where she had been. He turned around confused. Where did the little human go? She was behind him now. Her hand touched a spot on his thick neck. He swung one axe backward, but she was already gone again, moving like smoke, like shadow, like something that was never really solid to begin with. The arena went quiet. Students stopped cheering. This was not what they expected to see. Fakful spun in circles trying to find her. His axes cut through air. His roars filled the space with angry sound. But Yuna stayed just out of reach, always one step ahead, always in the perfect place to avoid his attacks. She touched his wrist. The axe fell from his right hand. She brushed against his knee. His leg buckled, and he dropped to one side. Each touch was light and quick, but somehow his body stopped working where she had been. 90 seconds after the fight started, Fakful collapsed. His eyes were open but confused. His body would not obey his commands. He tried to speak, but only made small sounds. Yuna knelt beside him. "You fought well," she said quietly. Her hands moved over his neck and shoulders. Feeling returned to his arms. Strength came back to his legs. She helped him stand up. The massive Gormaxi warrior leaned on the tiny human girl like she was made of steel instead of soft flesh. The arena stayed silent. No one spoke. No one moved. They all stared at the impossible thing they had just seen. Professor Velton dropped his medical alert device. It clattered on the floor, but he did not pick it up. His scared face showed shock for the first time in decades. "What is your combat background?" he demanded. Yuna walked toward the exit. "I have had some training," she said. "Some training," Velton repeated. "Some training does not do what you just did." She did not answer. She just kept walking until she reached the door. Then she was gone, and the arena exploded with voices. Students talked fast in 6 different languages. They argued about what they had seen. Some said it was luck. Others said it was impossible. Nari caught up with Yuna in the hallway. "What was that?" she whispered. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" Yuna asked. "You know what? That was not normal human fighting." Yuna looked at her roommate with calm eyes. "I learned some things before I came here." "What kind of things?" "Useful things." But Nari could see that her friend would not say more. Not yet. Strange things started happening at Nexus Academy 3 days after the combat trials. Security cameras went dark for hours at a time. Computer files disappeared from locked databases. Nobody could explain how or why. Yuna noticed the patterns first. She always noticed patterns. Someone was moving through the academy like a ghost. Someone who knew exactly which cameras to avoid and which files to steal. The first disappearance happened on a Tuesday night. Ambassador Crix from the Veltari delegation vanished from his secured quarters. No signs of struggle. No broken locks. Just an empty room and questions nobody could answer. The second was Chancellor Zephyr from the Krellian trade mission. Found his room the same way. Clean, quiet, empty. The third was Administrator Quelm from the Gormaxi Council. Security found his quarters at dawn with the bed still made and breakfast getting cold on the table. Station Security Chief Braun scratched his head and made worried faces. His team checked every corridor and scanning device. They found nothing useful. No fingerprints. No DNA traces. No energy signatures that did not belong. But Yuma saw what they missed. Small things that most people would ignore. A scratch on a ventilation cover that should not be there. Dust patterns on the floor that showed someone had walked through but cleaned up after. The smell of a cleaning chemical that was not used by Academy maintenance. She knew these signs, had seen them before in the Outer Rim systems where pirates and killers played deadly games. Someone very dangerous was hunting on Nexus Prime. That night she dressed in dark clothes and left her room after midnight. The Academy corridors were dim and quiet. Most students slept in their beds dreaming of homeworlds and final exams. Yuna moved through the shadows like she belonged there. Her feet made no sound on the metal floors. Her breathing stayed slow and controlled. She had learned to hunt in places much darker than this. The lower levels of the Academy were restricted to students, old maintenance tunnels and storage rooms that connected to the main station systems. Perfect places for someone to hide while planning their next move. She found the access shaft behind a cleaning supply closet. The lock had been picked by someone who knew what they were doing. Recent scratches on the metal showed it had been opened several times in the past week. Yuna climbed down into darkness. Emergency lights cast thin red glows along the tunnel walls. She could hear the deep hum of station power systems and air recycling units. Footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead. Careful steps that tried to stay quiet but could not hide completely from ears that knew how to listen. She followed the sound through twisting passages until she reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Someone was already waiting there. A young man about her age stood in the shadows. Dark hair and clothes that were meant to blend in. He had the same careful way of moving that she recognized in herself. "You should not be here," he said quietly. "Neither should you," she replied. They watched each other for a long moment, both ready to fight or run depending on what happened next. "My name is Juan," he said finally. "I think we might be looking for the same thing." "What thing is that?" Yuna asked. "The thing that has been taking people. The thing that can change its shape to look like anyone it wants." Yuna felt ice in her stomach. Shape changers were the most dangerous killers in the galaxy. They could be your friend during the day and your murderer at night. "Velocorion," she whispered. Juan nodded. "You know the name. I have been hunting him for 2 years. So have I. Earth External Security Division sent me here when we learned he was coming to Nexus Prime." Yuna studied the young man who claimed to be a government agent. "Why is he here? What does he want?" "Chancellor Mora," Juan said. "She has information about war crimes from the border conflicts, testimony that could bring down some very powerful people. And they sent Velocorion to stop her." "Yes, but first he has to eliminate everyone else who knows what she knows. The missing diplomats, the stolen files." It all made sense now. Velocorion was removing witnesses before he made his final move. "We need to work together," Juan said. Yuna looked at him carefully. Trust did not come easy in her line of work. But sometimes the enemy of your enemy really was your friend. "All right," she said. "But if you betray me, I will kill you." Juan smiled grimly. "Fair enough. I was going to say the same thing to you." The academy buzzed with whispers for 3 days. Students huddled in groups sharing wild theories about the quiet human girl who had defeated Thokvul so easily. Some said she was a government spy. Others claimed she was a secret weapon trained by Earth military. Security footage of her fight spread through underground data networks. Students from other species downloaded the video to study her movements. Frame by frame, they watched her flow around the massive Gormaxi like water around stone. Yuna tried to keep her normal routine. Attend classes. Take notes. Stay invisible. But now everyone watched her. When she walked down hallways, conversations stopped. When she entered rooms, heads turned to follow her movement. Instructor Zek cornered her after advanced combat theory. The tall Velteri moved with quick, nervous energy. His big black eyes studied her face like he was reading a puzzle. "Miss Yuna," he said, "we need to talk." She followed him to his office. The walls were covered with star charts and tactical displays. A small desk held data pads and communication devices. "Sit," Zek commanded. She remained standing. Old habits from years of staying ready to run or fight. Zek activated a privacy screen. The office filled with soft white noise that would block listening devices. "I know who you are." "I am a student," Yuna replied. "No, you are Jin Yuna, known in the Outer Rim as Silent Death. Bounty hunter, killer of criminals that governments could not catch." He placed a data pad on his desk. Pictures filled the screen. Images of her from a dozen different worlds. Always in shadows or at distance, but clearly the same person. "Velteri intelligence has been tracking your activities for 2 years, Zek continued. 17 high-value captures, 4 pirate fleets destroyed, 2 criminal organizations dismantled, all by one small human woman. Yuna said nothing. Her face showed no emotion, but her muscles tensed, ready for action. "Why are you here?" Zek demanded. "What are you hunting on Nexus Prime?" Before she could answer, alarms screamed through the academy. Red lights flashed in the corridors. An automated voice announced a security emergency in the main auditorium. Yuna ran toward the sound, leaving Zek shouting behind her. Students scattered in panic as security teams rushed past. She pushed through the crowd, moving against the flow like a fish swimming upstream. The auditorium doors were sealed. Through the windows she could see Chancellor Mora on the stage giving her scheduled lecture about galactic trade law. 300 students sat in the audience listening to topics that seemed boring and safe. Then she saw him. Velkorian stood in the back row. He looked like a normal Krellian student, but Yuna recognized the way he moved. The careful positioning, the hands that stayed close to hidden weapons. She tried the doors, locked from inside. Security protocols designed to contain threats also trapped the target with her killer. Yuna looked at the windows. Reinforced metal and glass built to survive weapon impacts. But the frame connections were older technology, weaker points that could be exploited. She kicked the frame junction with precise force. The window cracked. Another kick, and it shattered inward. Students screamed as she dove through the opening. Glass scattered around her as she rolled to her feet in the aisle. Velkorian was already moving. His disguise melted away as his body shifted into its true form. Gray skin became mottled green. Fake student clothes revealed advanced combat armor underneath. A plasma blade appeared in his hand. He leaped toward the stage where Chancellor Mora stood frozen in terror. Yuna intercepted him in midair. They crashed together into the first row of seats. Metal bent and sparked under the impact. Students fled in all directions, screaming for help. The fight that followed was brutal and fast. Velkorian had strength and weapons and decades of killing experience. But Yuna had been hunting him for 2 years. She knew his patterns, his weaknesses, his favorite tricks. They crashed through seats and over barriers. His blade cut the air where she had been moments before. Her strikes found gaps in his armor that should not have existed. The entire galaxy would see this fight. Security cameras broadcast every moment to news feeds across known space. The quiet student was gone forever. In her place stood the most feared bounty hunter alive. Velkorian broke away and fled through an emergency exit. Yuna started to follow but stopped when she saw the crowd watching her. Hundreds of alien students stared in shock and fear. They finally knew who had been sitting in their classrooms. The Silent Death had revealed herself to the universe. News feeds across the galaxy showed the same footage over and over. A small human woman fighting a deadly assassin with skills that made alien military experts shake their heads in disbelief. The video played on every major network from the core worlds to the outer rim. In the Krellian Senate chambers, angry voices demanded answers. How could one human capture their most dangerous criminals? Why had Earth hidden such capabilities from the galactic community? 3 senators called for immediate investigation of human military programs. The Veltari Council met in emergency session. Intelligence reports scattered across their conference table showed dozens of successful hunts by the woman called Silent Death. Each capture had embarrassed their security forces. Each victory proved human abilities they had never suspected. Gormaxi clan leaders gathered in their war halls. They watched the footage of Yuna defeating Thokful and felt something they rarely experienced: fear. If humans could produce warriors like this, how many more were hiding among them? On Earth, government officials held crisis meetings behind closed doors. They publicly denied any knowledge of Jin Yuna attending Nexus Academy. Privately, they coordinated with Agent Juan to complete the mission without starting a galactic war. But Velkorian was not finished. 3 days after his failed assassination attempt, he made his move against the people Yuna cared about. Nari disappeared from her room during the night shift change. No alarms, no security alerts, just empty quarters and a message left on her desk written in old Krellian script. The hunter becomes the hunted. Sector 7 maintenance level. Come alone, or your friends die one by one. Yuna found the note when she returned from another meeting with Academy security. Her hand shook as she read the words. This was exactly what she had feared would happen. Juan appeared in her doorway. He has others too. 3 more students from your classes, the ones who talk to you the most. Which students? She asked. Kira from the Veltari delegation, Yumbrek from the Gormaxi exchange program, and Cyan the Krellian, who always sat near you in Professor Veltan's class. Yuna felt cold anger building in her chest. Velkorian was using innocent people as weapons against her, children who had done nothing but attend school and make friends. It is a trap, Juan warned. Of course it is a trap, but I cannot leave them to die. Earth Command wants you to abort the mission. Too much political pressure. They think you should return home and let other agencies handle Velkorian. What do you think? She asked. Juan checked his weapon and communication gear. I think we finish what we started. The Academy had become a battleground of different interests. Krellian security teams tried to capture Yuna for questioning. Veltari intelligence wanted to study her methods. Gormaxi investigators demanded access to Earth military files. Professor Veltan spent hours reviewing footage of her combat techniques. His scared face showed confusion and grudging respect. Everything he had learned about warfare suddenly seemed incomplete. These are not human tactics, he muttered to himself. This is something new, something beyond what any species has developed. He pulled up training manuals from the greatest Krellian warriors in history. None of them moved like Yuna moved. None of them saw weaknesses that she could exploit. Chancellor Mora called Yuna to her office through secret channels. The old diplomat looked tired and worried. Her hands trembled as she activated privacy screens. There are things you need to know, Mora said, about why Velkorian is really here, about who sent him. She opened a secure data file. Names and faces filled the screen. Government officials from a dozen species, military leaders, corporate executives, all connected by lines showing hidden relationships. They call themselves the Conclave, Mora explained. Shadow leaders who profit from keeping species separate and suspicious of each other. Your integration into galactic society threatens everything they have built. Yuna studied the conspiracy web. It was vast and complex, reaching into every major government and military organization. How long have they existed? She asked. Centuries, maybe longer. They engineer conflicts to maintain their power, create fear to justify their authority. And they want me dead because I threaten their plans. Not just you. All of humanity. Your species adapts too fast, learns too quickly, makes friends too easily. Everything they work to prevent. Yuna understood now. This was bigger than one assassin or one mission. This was about the future of human civilization in the galaxy. "Help me save my friends," she said. "Then we end this conspiracy forever." Sector 7 maintenance level looked like a war zone. Broken pipes leaked steam into dim corridors. Emergency lights flashed red and orange, creating dancing shadows on metal walls. The air smelled of oil and burning electronics. Yuna moved through the maze carefully. Every step could trigger a trap. Every corner could hide an enemy. Velkorian had turned the lower levels into his hunting ground. But he was not alone anymore. Footsteps echoed from 3 different directions. Heavy Gormaxi boots, quick Veltari steps, the measured pace of Krellian warriors. Velkorian had made deals with the criminal underground that lived in the dark spaces of Nexus Prime. A plasma bolt sizzled past her head. She rolled behind a support beam as more shots came from above. Someone had positioned snipers on the upper maintenance walkways. "Little human hunter," a rough voice called out. "We have been waiting for you." 3 Gormaxi mercenaries stepped into the corridor ahead. Their red skin was covered in scars and tattoos that marked them as killers for hire. Heavy weapons hung from their belts. Combat armor protected their massive bodies. "Velkorian pays good money for your death," the leader growled. "Nothing personal, just business." They opened fire together. Energy bolts filled the narrow space with deadly light, but Yuna was already moving. She ran up the wall using pipes and conduits like ladder rungs. The Gormaxi weapons tracked too slowly to follow her fluid motion. She dropped behind them and struck pressure points that shut down their nervous systems. All 3 collapsed within seconds. Their weapons clattered uselessly on the floor. "Impossible," someone whispered from the shadows. More enemies appeared. Veltari assassins with poisoned darts and speed-enhanced armor. They moved fast, but Yuna moved faster. She read their attack patterns before they fully formed in their minds. The first assassin never saw the hand that broke his weapon. The second managed 1 shot before Yuna put him to sleep with a nerve strike. The third tried to run but found himself unconscious before he took 3 steps. A Krellian berserker charged from a side passage. His war cry shook dust from the ceiling. Thick armor covered him like a metal shell. A power hammer swung toward her head with enough force to crush stone. Yuna caught his wrist and redirected the attack into a support beam. The hammer stuck in twisted metal. She struck the weak points in his armor that she had memorized from years of studying alien anatomy. The berserker fell like a toppled building. "She fights like a demon," someone said over comm channels. "How does she know where to strike us? This is not possible for any single warrior." Yuna found the first hostage in a storage room, young Breck from the Gormaxi exchange program. He was tied up but unharmed. His eyes went wide when he saw her. "Miss Yuna," he whispered. "They said you would come. They said it was a trap." "I know," she replied, cutting his bonds. "Stay here until security arrives." She moved deeper into the maze. More mercenaries tried to stop her. Each group thought their species' advantages would be enough. Each group learned they were wrong. Krellian strength meant nothing against technique that used their own power against them. Veltari speed became useless when someone could predict where they would be. Gormaxi fury broke against calm precision that never made mistakes. Bodies littered the corridors behind her, not dead but defeated, sleeping or paralyzed by strikes that shut down specific nerve clusters. She could have killed them all but chose mercy instead. Juan's voice crackled over her comm device. "Security teams are moving to support you. The academy is in lockdown." "How are the students?" she asked. "Strange thing. The alien students are protecting your human classmates. They say if anyone tries to hurt humans, they will have to fight all of them together." Something warm touched Yuna's heart. The prejudices that divided species were starting to crack. Fear was becoming respect. Suspicion was turning into friendship. She found Nari in the central maintenance hub. Her roommate was tied to a chair surrounded by explosive devices. Velkorian stood behind her with a plasma blade at her throat. "Finally," he said, "the great silent death comes to save her little friend." "Let her go," Yuna said. Your fight is with me. My fight is with all of humanity. You represent everything my employers fear. Adaptation, growth, unity where there should be division. Red lights blinked on the explosives. The timer showed 2 minutes. Choose quickly, Hunter. Try to save her, and we all die. Or let her die, and face me alone. Yuna looked at her friend. Nari's eyes showed trust despite the fear. She believed Yuna would find a way. I choose both, Yuna said, and moved. Yuna moved like lightning. Her first strike hit the explosive timer and froze it at 7 seconds. Her second strike caught Velkorian's wrist and forced his blade away from Nari's throat. Her third strike put him on the ground unconscious before he could react. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. Nari stared in shock. How did you do that? The explosives should have gone off. Pressure point on the device core, Yuna explained as she cut the ropes. Shuts down the trigger mechanism for about 10 minutes. Learned it from a bomb disposal expert on Kepler Station. Security teams flooded into the maintenance hub. Juan arrived with Academy guards and medical staff. They found Velkorian tied up with his own equipment and Yuna sitting calmly beside him. Is he talking? Juan asked. He will, Yuna replied. Fear makes people honest. They moved the assassin to a secure interrogation room in the Academy's detention center. Velkorian sat in restraints designed to hold the strongest alien criminals. His shape-shifting abilities were blocked by an energy field that locked his cellular structure. Chancellor Mora entered with Professor Velton and several other Academy officials. Recording devices activated to capture everything that would be said. You failed, Mora told the prisoner. Your employers will not be pleased. Velkorian laughed bitterly. You think this was the real mission. Killing you was just a distraction. The real goal was to draw out the human hunter and study her capabilities. What do you mean? Velton demanded. Every fight was recorded. Every technique analyzed. My employers now know exactly how dangerous humans have become. They have the data they need to plan the final solution. Ice formed in Yuna's stomach. Final solution to what? To the human problem. Your species adapts too fast. Makes friends too easily. Threatens the natural order that has kept the galaxy stable for thousands of years. Velkorian's eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. The Conclave has been planning this for decades, waiting for the right moment to prove that humans are too dangerous to exist among civilized species. Chancellor Mora activated a secure communication link. Get me the Galactic Council. Emergency session. Full priority. Data files streamed across wall displays. Names and faces of the shadow organization that had manipulated galactic politics for centuries. Government officials who started wars to maintain their power. Military leaders who sold weapons to both sides of conflicts. Corporate executives who profited from eternal division between species. The Veltari Counselor Zethan, Velkorian continued. The Krellian General Vorthak. The Gormaxi Trade Minister Grun. All of them serve the Conclave. All of them fear what humanity represents. Professor Velton studied the conspiracy charts with growing anger. These people have been using us, making us fight each other while they grew rich and powerful. For how long, Yuma asked. Since before your species left its home world. They knew humans would eventually reach the stars. They prepared for that day by ensuring you would find a galaxy full of suspicious enemies instead of potential friends. The full scope of the conspiracy became clear. Every conflict between species for the past 3 centuries. Every failed peace treaty. Every trade war and border dispute. All carefully orchestrated to prevent unity and cooperation. But something went wrong with their plan, Velkorian said with bitter amusement. Humans refused to be what they expected. Instead of becoming another warlike species, you became something they never anticipated. What is that? Moore asked. Bridge builders. Peacemakers. People who see potential allies where others see only enemies. Warning alarms suddenly filled the academy. Security alerts flashed on every screen. Juan's communication device crackled with urgent messages from Station Command. Multiple ships approaching Nexus Prime, a voice reported. Krellian battle cruisers, Veltari attack squadrons, Cormaxi assault transports. They are demanding the surrender of the human operative. Yuna looked at the tactical displays showing the approaching fleets. Dozens of warships from different species working together for the first time in decades, all united by their fear of what she represented. The Conclave is making their move, she said quietly. They will destroy the Academy to eliminate you, Velcorian warned, and blame it on an unfortunate accident during joint military exercises. Chancellor Mora's face went pale. 3,000 students are on this station, innocent children from every major species in the galaxy. Acceptable losses, Velcorian said. The Conclave has sacrificed millions to maintain their control. What are a few thousand more? Yuna stood up slowly. Her quiet voice carried absolute determination. Then we stop them here, all of us together. Professor Velton nodded grimly. The students deserve to know the truth. About the conspiracy, about who has been manipulating their governments. And they deserve the chance to choose their own future, Mora added. The Academy was about to become a battlefield, but this time the lines would not be drawn between species. This time it would be truth against lies, unity against division, the future against the past. Academy alarm systems screamed as enemy ships surrounded Nexus Prime. Through the great viewing windows, students watched battle cruisers take attack positions, gun ports open like hungry mouths, weapon systems charged with deadly energy. Chancellor Mora's voice echoed through every corridor. All students and faculty report to designated defensive positions. This is not a drill. We are under attack by forces that wish to destroy everything this academy represents. In the main assembly hall, 3,000 young beings from dozens of species gathered together. Fear showed on every face, but also something else. Determination. They had learned the truth about the conspiracy. Now they would fight to protect their future. Yuna stood before them all. The quiet girl from the back corner was gone forever. In her place stood a warrior who had earned respect from every species in the galaxy. They want us to be afraid of each other, she said. Her voice carried to every corner of the vast room. They want us to see enemies where we should see friends. Today we prove them wrong. Professor Velton stepped forward. I have studied warfare my entire life. I thought I understood strength. But watching this human taught me that real strength comes from working together. A Veltari student raised her hand. What can we do? We are just students. They have warships and armies. You have something they do not, Yuna replied. You have each other, and you have the truth. The first energy blast struck the Academy's outer shields. The station shook like a leaf in a storm. Emergency lights flickered as power systems strained under the assault. Juan coordinated the defensive teams through his communication network. Krellian students to Section 7. Use your strength to reinforce the blast doors. Veltari teams to the sensor arrays. We need your speed for reconnaissance missions. Cormaxi squads to the weapon emplacements. Time to show them what real fury looks like. Human students took positions throughout the academy. They carried no special advantages of strength or speed, but they had something equally valuable. The ability to see connections that others missed, to find solutions where others saw only problems. The enemy forces launched their main assault. Boarding pods crashed through weakened sections of the hull. Armored soldiers poured into the corridors like a deadly flood. Each one wore the symbol of the Conclave on their battle armor. But they found something they did not expect. Krellian students worked with humans to create choke points that funneled attackers into kill zones. Veltari scouts guided Cormaxi warriors to perfect ambush positions. Species that had been enemies for centuries now fought side by side like family. Yuna moved through the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra. She coordinated attacks that used each species' strengths while covering their weaknesses. Her tactical genius turned the academy into a weapon that struck with devastating precision. Impossible, enemy commanders reported to their ships. The defenders are working together, all species fighting as one unit. That is impossible, came the reply. The psychological profiles show they should be attacking each other by now. In the ceremonial hall, the final assault began. Conclave elite forces broke through the last defensive line. These were not ordinary soldiers, but the best warriors from every species, enhanced with technology and trained to kill without mercy. They expected to find terrified students hiding behind makeshift barriers. Instead, they found a fortress defended by beings who had discovered something more powerful than any weapon: unity. The battle raged through corridors and chambers. Energy blasts lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. The sound of combat echoed through every section of the academy. Yuna fought at the center of it all, not just as a warrior, but as a symbol. Every alien student who fought beside her was making a choice, choosing hope over fear, choosing trust over suspicion, choosing the future over the past. Young Breck the Gormaxi stood back to back with Nari the human. Kira the Veltari covered Cyan the Krellian as he carried wounded to safety. Professor Velton fought alongside Instructor Zek as equals and friends. The Conclave forces began to waver. Their leaders had promised them an easy victory against divided enemies. They had not prepared for this level of resistance from united defenders. But the hardest fight was still coming. In the depths of the academy, something stirred. The real enemy was about to reveal itself. The last Conclave soldiers surrendered when their commanders saw something impossible happening on their tactical displays. Every species in the galaxy was receiving the same broadcast from Nexus Academy. Students from dozens of worlds stood together in the damaged ceremonial hall. Krellian arms around Veltari shoulders. Gormaxi hands helping human friends to their feet. Young beings who had been taught to fear each other now looked like family. Chancellor Mora stepped forward with evidence files that would bring down governments across the galaxy. "Citizens of all worlds," she announced. "Today you see the truth about who has been your real enemy." Names and faces of Conclave members filled screens on every planet. Government officials who had started wars for profit. Military leaders who sold weapons to create conflicts. Corporate executives who grew rich while others died. The galaxy watched as their trusted leaders were exposed as criminals and traitors. On Krell Prime, angry senators demanded the arrest of General Vorthak. On Velatar, homeworld citizens surrounded government buildings calling for justice. Across Gormaxi, space clan leaders denounced Trade Minister Grun as a betrayer of their honor. The conspiracy that had lasted for centuries crumbled in a single day. 3 months later, Yuna sat in the same classroom where her journey had begun. But everything was different now. She no longer hid in the back corner. Students from every species asked her questions and listened to her answers with respect. Professor Velton had become her partner in developing new combat courses. "Today we study integrated tactics," he announced. "How different species can combine their abilities to achieve impossible victories." The academy curriculum had changed completely. Instead of learning why other species were enemy, students now learned how to work with them as allies. Combat theory included cooperation protocols. History classes taught the truth about manufactured conflicts. Nari raised her hand. "Professor Yuna, what was the most important lesson you learned as a bounty hunter?" Yuna smiled at her friend. The title felt strange, but she had accepted the teaching position because these students needed to understand what she had discovered in the Outer Rim. "I learned that the deadliest weapon in the galaxy is not technology or strength," she said. "It is understanding your enemy well enough to see the person underneath." A Veltari student asked the next question. "But how do you defeat someone without destroying them?" "The greatest victory is not defeating your enemies," Yuna replied. "It is making them your allies instead." Young Breck the Gormaxi nodded thoughtfully. "Like what happened with us. We thought humans were weak, but we learned to see your real strength. And we learned that strength comes in many forms." Kira the Veltari added, "Speed and power and wisdom all working together." Agent Juan entered the classroom carrying a message pad. He had become the Academy's director of security and worked with students from every species to keep Nexus Prime safe. "News from Earth Command," he announced. The Galactic Council voted to establish permanent cooperation treaties between all member species. The conclave trials begin next month. Applause filled the classroom. Students who had once feared each other now celebrated together. After class, Yuna walked through corridors that buzzed with friendly voices speaking dozens of languages. Study groups mixed every species together. Training sessions showed young beings how to use their differences as advantages. Cheyenne the Krellian fell into step beside her. "Do you ever miss being silent, Death?" he asked. The adventure and excitement of hunting criminals. Yuna looked through windows at ships arriving with new students from across the galaxy. Each one would learn what these had learned. That cooperation was stronger than conflict. That understanding was more powerful than fear. "I am still hunting," she said, "but now I hunt ignorance and prejudice instead of people." "And how do you catch those enemies?" "By teaching young minds to recognize them. By showing students like you that the galaxy is full of friends waiting to be discovered." That evening she stood before a new class of first-year students, nervous young beings from worlds that had been enemies for generations. They sat apart from each other, uncertain and afraid. "Welcome to Nexus Academy," she began. "My name is Yuma, and I used to think that strength meant fighting alone. You are here to learn that real strength comes from fighting together." The quiet girl who once hid in corners now stood at the front of the classroom. Not as a hunter of criminals, but as a builder of bridges. Not as silent death, but as a teacher of life. The deadliest weapon in the galaxy had become the most powerful force for peace.